Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Five Star Revolution Podcast. I am your host, CJ Price. And this is another great episode here on the Five Star Revolution Podcast. If you haven't already, go over to our Facebook page right now and like our Facebook page, Five Star Revolution Podcast, for your chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Five Star Revolution Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, and his name is Osirus. How you doing tonight, sir?
Good, man. Good. Quick question. The gift card. How many followers you trying to get to give that away?
1,000 likes on Facebook. We're almost halfway there.
Halfway there. All right. That's what's up,
Almost
man.
halfway there.
So anybody watching, if you haven't gone on there and liked it, go like it and tell your friends to like it. The faster you get to 1,000, the faster you got the chance to get the $100 gift card.
I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that. And that's not the only thing we're gonna do. We're gonna give away more gift cards if we get more followers. So keep
Okay.
following us and spread the word.
There we
So,
go.
Mr. Osiris, I always ask this question to every single wrestler that comes on my podcast, and you're gonna be no different. How or when did you get introduced into the world of professional wrestling?
Wow. How and when did I get introduced into the world of professional wrestling? Well, since a little kid, my family was into it. And before I forget, I watched an episode of your show that had Don Kincaid on it. And I want to say shout out to Don Kincaid. And Don Kincaid, you have an open invite to my place. Um, Come over for some barbecue or something like that. Hit me up via email, osiristhechamp@gmail.com, and we'll make it happen. But as far as how I got into wrestling, grew up on it. My uncle, a lot of people know Doc Ozone. He was involved in wrestling when I was a little kid. He was part of an indie company out in New Hampshire, UCW. It's actually where Scotty 2 Hotty came from. And at the time, quite a few of those guys were on TV. Bob Evans, he was another guy that came from over there. So I grew up around wrestling. I'd go to the shows to see Doc. He was the ring announcer back then, and backstage interviewer. I grew up around it, watching all the old school WWF Saturday mornings, WCW, Worldwide. I used to set my alarm clock. I forget what day of the week it was, but it was like 4 in the morning. Get up and I think it was like WSBK or something had like an hour block of like some WCW wrestling. I was watching everything.
So you were a fan growing up, correct?
Oh yeah, yep, big time.
And who was your favorite wrestler growing up?
That's changed as time has gone on over the years. My first, like the big year that I really remember is 1992, the WWF Royal Rumble where Ric Flair won from number 3. That's one of my biggest, like, early wrestling memories, like really early, like being like, oh man, this is like a really cool thing. I also remember that year Super Brawl 2. I remember being at my grandmother's house and, she ordered the pay-per-view for me and I think it was like Sting against Rick Rude or actually I think it was Rick Rude against Ricky Steamboat. But whatever the case, I was a huge Rick Rude fan. Rick Rude, I was a big fan of at the time. When Ric Flair came to WWF and coming from NWA, WCW, I thought that was really cool. So I was a big fan of that. But then when Shawn Michaels became HBK, the Heartbreak Kid, and he's got Sensational Sherry coming to the ring with him, and he's grabbing her by the hair and throwing her down on the mat and everything. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, that's what I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to get in there and spandex and grab chicks by the hair, throw them down. Like, oh man, like I knew then that this is what I want to do. I've only gotten one chance to grab a chick by the hair and throw her down in a wrestling ring. That was Delilah Hayden. And we had a really cool match for MAW. One of my favorite matches. The psychology of the match was really good. Delilah let me kick her ass. Am I allowed to say ass?
Yeah, yeah, man. You can swear all you want.
Oh, awesome, awesome, cool. But yeah, so she let me kick her ass. She kicked my ass. Some of the hardest forearm shots I've ever taken were from her. So that was really cool and a very fun match. But yeah. So to answer your question, make a long story really short, or probably what should have been a short story, make it really long. Yeah, growing up, I loved Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, Rick Rude. And then later on, come the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, I got really big into Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner. That was my guy, And then The Rock, I was a big fan of The Rock. When I was in high school, I wanted to be like The Rock so bad. I used to buy like these rayon shirts, and I'd have those with the pants and like dress shoes. I'd walk into school. I had like this fossil watch, and I'd be like, I've got my $500 watch. $1,000 shirts, and what you gonna do? And the whole thing. It was pretty ridiculous. But yeah. So as times have gone on, I've had different favorites. When I got into wrestling, Slick Wagner Brown was my favorite wrestler. I thought he was the most amazing thing. Watching him and April Hunter together and just the whole package of all of that. And that's a huge part of why I went to Killer Kowalski's wrestling school was because he was the trainer there. And I was like, oh man, I want to learn from this guy. He seems so badass.
So for those fans that don't know you, can you explain a little bit about the Osiris character and what it's about?
Yeah, Osiris, it's a character, isn't really a character. It's based on my mood that day. It's going to be kind of what you get. Osiris was never really supposed to be my wrestling gimmick. It's funny, kind of like Mick Foley, he had his dude love, and that was the big thing he was going to do. I I got into wrestling not really with an idea of a gimmick or a name, but when I started training with Killer Kowalski, he wanted me to be simply the best GA West. He was like, it just flows off the tongue, I can drink this tomato juice or whatever. But but at the time, I didn't feel like I was good enough to be that. I'm like, well, if you're going to call yourself simply the best, you have to be the best. And when I got my first match, it was actually a funny story. Not that funny of a story, but I'm about to do a lot of name dropping. Eddie Edwards, who I was training with at the time at Killer Kowalski's, he got invited to do a show in Fall River, Mass. And or I should say, he was booked on a show in Fall River, Mass. And he ended up getting a better booking. But to not let them down, he hit me up, and I had never had a match before. He's like, "Hey, you wanna work this show in Fall River that I can't do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." He's like, "It'll be a tag match, like it'll be easy." I'm like, "All right, cool." And at this point, I don't have any gear, so I wrestled in. So I've got a Taekwondo background. I did Taekwondo. I was on a fighting team in college, and then pursued it. Beyond that, I like dabbling in various martial arts. So Eddie Edwards, hits me up. So I'm like, all right. So I wore my gi pants and a wife beater and some basketball sneakers, and I show up at the show in Fall River. Turns out I'm teaming with Mike Bennett, who
Wow, nice.
yeah, yeah, like I said, I'm about to do a lot of name dropping. And then we're taking on Todd Hansen, and the great story, Doc Ozone, no part of the show at all. He's in the crowd to come support me for my very first show, and he ends up cracking Todd Hansen with a steel chair for some reason. I don't even remember it. Yeah, but it turned into this whole crazy thing. But yeah, so it was my very first match. Teamed with Mike Bennett. And we took on the Score. At the time, Rich Bass, I believe, was managing them. I don't think he was refereeing. I actually think Zach the Ref was the referee for that match. But yeah, so going into this thing, I'm not ready to be a wrestler. So simply the best GA West isn't going to be a thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a name. And a buddy of mine that I went to college with, Pete McPete, shout out to you if you're watching. He gave me the idea Osirus. My nickname in college, well, actually, I had two nicknames in college. One of them was Kung Fu Joe, but the other nickname was the Dark Prince. And, I was very into some dark spirituality type stuff. And he explained the story of Osiris to me, the Egyptian god of the underworld, and it's like, yeah, man, I dig that. It fits, and it was supposed to be a temporary thing, and it's stuck. Except I did go through a brief period of being simply the best GA West, as well as simply God's best GA West. From like 2011 to 2013, but that's a whole nother chapter for a whole nother time. 2013 was an amazing year for me. That's the year that I like to say that I was fucking midgets and beating up hookers. But it's actually the other way around. But I had a feud with Rob the Giant. That year, we had a series of matches, including an Iron Man match. The match that I was very proud of that he and I had put together, kept the crowd captivated throughout. And then, yeah, when I wasn't feuding with him, I was banging hookers. It was awesome.
So, if there's one thing in professional wrestling that you have learned, how do you carry that? How do you carry on that lesson in your personal life?
Wait, I'm sorry. Repeat the question, please.
If there's one thing, one lesson that you learn in professional wrestling, how do you take that lesson into your personal life?
Um, the best answer I'm going to that, and here's a great segue into it. I think of Chad Epic. He says his thing is APMO, always putting myself over. You've always got to be selling, you got to be working, hustling. With that being said, right now I'm taking a sip of my BCAs from Blackstone Labs. Anybody that is into BCAs, protein powder, the best supplements in the world, Blackstone Labs, go to blackstonelabs.com, use discount code Osirus _ the champ, get a huge savings on your purchase. So yeah, always putting yourself over, always out there selling, always hustling.
Sounds good. Sounds good. What can we expect out of Osiris in the next 3 years?
I don't know. I actually intended to retire from wrestling last year. Um, yeah, man, you're getting the scoop. Funny. So here's a funny thing. For anybody watching this that knows me, has been trying to get in touch with me for the past year, I know I've been completely unavailable. In fact, the only reason I found out about this, we were not Instagram friends. And I've got a friend of mine who will go by Mr. No Name, who is not the same friend of mine that I'm on a podcast with. Oh, by the way, everybody, I do host a weekly podcast. You can catch it on all your favorite podcast things, Spotify and iTunes and whatever, I don't know. But yeah, it's called Before the Three Count. It's me and my co-host, Mr. No Name, and we discuss all sorts of various wrestling topics. CJ, we'll have to have you on sometime.
I would love to come on, man.
Cool. We'll turn the tables around. I'll be asking you the questions.
All right.
We'll
Sounds
get to
good.
know you. And but yeah, so for everyone out there, definitely check that out before the three count on all your favorite podcast platforms. But anyways, yeah. So I have another friend who also will go by Mr. No Name, and he handles a lot of my business stuff for me. I'm horrible with social media. I'm horrible with my emails and everything. And so he goes in and checks stuff out for me because actually I almost lost my sponsorship with Blackstone Labs because I wasn't keeping up with the things I needed to do. And he was like, dude, like, let's work together. We'll get through some of this stuff, blah, 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 blah. So he goes in, he checks my messages. And because we weren't Instagram friends, you were in my like spam folder kind of thing. So he's always going in there because that's usually where like you're seeing like the offers for like, hey, represent our thing and our brand. And most of them are junk. But he goes in there and he's like, hey, man, this dude CJ Price is asking you about doing a podcast. And I'm like, oh, my God, I know CJ Price, MAW, blah, blah, blah. You know what? Yeah, let's do it. And so I went on there, hit you up, and we, here we are. But yeah, so with all of that being said, I was going to retire last year. My intent was to go hard for a year, see what I can do, and then let the chips fall where they may. If I could do something big, then cool. But if not, you know what? Then time to let things go. And then a few things hit. First, I tore my pec.
That
And
sucks.
so yeah, that put me on the shelf, and then like a month later, COVID hits, and it's like, oh geez, So I was like, all right, well, COVID I thought was going to be like 2-3 weeks, I knew my pec thing, I was going to be out for about 3, 4 months. I actually went and saw Christian Frost. I feel horrible. I can't think of what his real name is right now. He's on Instagram as like Mobility Project, I think, or Mobility underscore Project. But he was my physical therapist. He helped me work through my as well as some hip problems that I was having. Uh, Shout out to him. He's now in Arizona. Anyone out that way that needs to get your body fixed up, go see him. He's amazing. Mind, body, and soul. But yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I've got all these ailments and issues, and COVID's going on. And then October came, and I was like, man, like I don't think this COVID stuff's ever going to end. I don't want to wrestle without crowds. That just doesn't do it for me. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm kind of done. I'm just going to quote the great Mike Tyson, I'm just going to fade into Bolivian, you know? And that was funny, CJ. Laugh. All right. But yeah, no. So I just sat around eating junk food, getting fat, and being like, yeah, whatever. Um, this year came around. A few people have hit me up. A couple people have the backbone that know how to get in touch with me. One of those people being SOG Ronnie Ribs. And he's like, dude, like, stop being a lazy fat ass, like, get yourself together and wrestle. And I'm like, nah.
So for those people who don't know who SOG Ronnie Ribs is, he used to be your tag team partner, and that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, man.
Do you like being a singles wrestler or a tag team wrestler, and why?
They each have their pluses and minuses, ebbs and flows. Overall, I think I prefer singles because it's less to corral. Singles match is two people. So you've only got two ideas and, you combine and congeal, make it work. When it's a tag team match, now you've got four people. So now you've got four ideas that you've got to combine and to make everything work. And it's a lot to keep track of depending on how people like to work. That's the other part of it too. Me, I'm an old school dude. I came up under the belief, because looking back on it, I think a lot of this was a lie. But I came up under the belief that people were supposed to just work the whole match, like, oh man, like one guy on this side of the, locker, another guy on the other side, the heel locker room. They never talk to each other until they get in the ring and they work that match. But I'm like, no, you watch stuff and you see like, wait, there's patterns, there's spots. I'm like, there was definitely some communication of some nature. So I do think it was a lie. But with that being said, that's how I came up. It's like, all right, cool. You just go out there and work, you know. And so that's how I prefer to work. But for that reason, that's why I like singles. I'm rambling, man. Dude, I popped
That's
like
fine, man.
25
That's
milligrams of
time. Your
edibles.
show,
So
man.
it's been all good,
So
all good.
my next question for you is, as a veteran of the professional wrestling business, how do you deal with those rookies or people that have been wrestling less than you, have an idea, and you say, no, we're going to do it this way instead?
I mean, literally just that. No, we're going to do it this way instead. Politely. I like to think you and I have worked together. I like to think I was pretty polite. And we worked through the match, and you give your ideas, I give my ideas, and that's where you get to. Very seldom do I have an issue with anybody in the ring wanting to do something that I'm not down to do. But when it happens, yeah, you say, nah, let's, try to work something else out. If it's a major part of someone's gimmick or something they really want to get in, I'll try my best to work with them. But yeah, if it's something that I think I could get hurt, it's just going to be no. If they want to take it, from there and go for liberties or something, let's rumble.
So, piggybacking on that, how do you deal with backstage politics?
I don't. Anybody that knows me and sees me at a show, I'm back there with my headphones on and just completely, oblivious to the world. So I don't know anything about backstage politics or how to deal with them. I think that's probably in some ways been great for my soul, in some ways probably bad for my career. I've never been one to push for myself or to advocate for myself, to be like, oh, I should get this, I should do that, I should have this win. I'm like, hey, typically the promoter comes to me and says, this is what we want to do. I'm like, cool, how do you want it done? And let's do it.
So when you go to a show, you don't care who's winning, who's losing. You just want to give a good performance.
Yeah, exactly. If someone wants to offer me a championship, I'm always happy to do it. I mean, I'm Osirus the champ. It's the gimmick. So. But yeah, at the end of the day, I really don't care. As long as we go out there, tell a cool story, get great crowd reaction, everything else is gravy.
So my next question for you is, if you can give us one or two funny road stories, mind sharing some?
One or two funny road stories. Yeah. Is this a kid show? Can I talk
Like
that
I
inside?
said, man, the platform is yours.
All right. So yeah, I'm gonna leave names out of the story, but my first road trip to Canada was the most amazing experience in the world for a young 21-year-old man, brand new to wrestling. At this point, I was maybe a year in the business, but I don't even think that long into it. And I had some veterans that were going on a tour of Canada. They invited me to go up there just to give people an idea of how long I've been wrestling for. When I first got started, I had to tape record with like an old school camcorder my matches. I recorded 3 of them, transferred them over to a VHS cassette. Put a sticky note on it saying, the time of the matches that you can fast forward to, and then I would send that out to promoters. So I've been doing this for a while, so yeah, I'm tour of Canada. I'm hyped. Number one, I'm like, I feel like a wrestler. Like I'm going to take a week in Canada and tour around and wrestle and get paid. This is amazing. First night there, big house, like 200-300 people. Place is going nuts. I'm cutting a promo. We're in Montreal. They speak French. Only French word I know is fromage, which means cheese. So I just get on the mic and I'm like, fromage, fromage, but yeah, so it's like, this is an amazing experience. We leave there, we go out, get drinks afterwards. Next night, same thing. We're eating French food like Tim Hortons and stuff like that. But so the second night of the tour, one of the people that I'm there with, they do a hardcore match, and they end up having to go to the hospital after the show to get stitched up and everything. So at this point, there were 3 of us sharing a hotel. So me and one of the other wrestlers were there, and he's a vet of the road. He's an older guy, and I mean, just this is early 2000s at this point, so he's kind of an old school dude. He's got the long hair, rough. He's got the beard. He's chewing tobacco, and he's like, "Oh, you ever fucked a hooker?" and, and I'm like, "No," but I want to be cool. I'm like, "No," but I'm down to sure. And and actually, I'm going to get very graphic and gross with this. So it's funny, we've been on the road for about 3 days. This is the second night of the tour, but 3 days of traveling. I've pretty much been living off of protein shakes, protein bars, and Slim Jims. So I destroy the toilet. Just absolutely destroyed. The place reeks. We're in this hotel room. Number one, it's 3 wrestlers in a hotel room, and we've wrestled for 2 nights now. So we smell like the place smells. And now I wrecked the bathroom, so now it really smells. We're spraying Axe trying to make this place smell better, which of course is just making it worse. So this chick shows up, the smoking hot redhead, and the wrestler that I'm with, he goes to the door and he's all, he's nervous. He doesn't know if it's going to be a cop and like some sort of, we're in another country. I'm super nervous. I'm like, oh, geez. He pokes his head around, blah, blah, blah. They say whatever. She comes in. Her English isn't great, but she looks at me and immediately she goes, "No black, no black." And I'm like, what? And I'm like, you know what? That's cool. You guys do your thing. Like, I'll just hang out over here. It's not that big of a deal to me. And he was like all hot about it. He's like, "What you mean, no black, blah, blah, blah." he's the one negotiating the price and blah 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 with her, and so they're going back and forth. I don't remember exactly what they negotiated, but I feel like it was supposed to just be the two of them doing their thing. And then he had some performance anxiety, and so nothing's happening, and he gets frustrated, and he literally just like grabs her and like throws her at me. And he's like, him, like, and she looks at me, she's like, no fuck, no fuck. And I'm like, okay, like, but so then she did her thing, and it was incredible. Again, a young 21-year-old man and his first experience on the road in Canada. And I'm like, wow, this is what wrestling is all about. Like, I feel like a wrestler now. I've just become Eskimo brothers with this guy. And I'm actually, at this point, Eskimo brothers with a lot of people in the wrestling business from back in those days. These days, I'm now in a relationship, and I live just a regular life. I've got a freezer over here with like 150 pounds of meat in it because we just bought a half of a cow. And so, yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of grilling and stuff coming up. But yeah, so that was a very different time and place for yours truly. But yeah, a funny road story. So that, happened. And then the guy that was in the hospital, he came back like an hour after, and he was pissed. He didn't even want to take part in it, but he just was pissed. He's like, wait a minute, I'm in the hospital, like getting stitched up and, taped up and glued up and body put back together like the Bionic Man, while you guys are, back here having fun. And it's like, yes, so yeah, so that's one road story. Can I give one more road story?
Sure, go ahead, man.
Cool, man. Another road story, another Canada trip. This is a few years later with a fun group of guys, including a big-time former WWE superstar. Well, again, I'm not going to mention names, but I felt, again, at this point, I'm probably like 25, and I'm like, wow, like I feel like a wrestler. Like we're traveling through Canada. I'm hanging out with this guy who was a big star during the Attitude Era. I'm like, this is amazing. A few funny things from that trip. Number one, while driving at night, we hit a moose. And the most amazing part about that is this former WWE star, he is holding a cup of vodka lemonade. And we see the moose, guy in front, he's like, moose, 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 moose. So we skid, and we ended up colliding like the side of the van against the moose. This guy holding his vodka lemonade up the whole time, like just like nothing's happening while the rest of us are freaking out. The car stops and he's just like, that was some crazy shit. Like, so that was cool. And then, so this was a kind of sketchy trip. The promoter was like, oh, like, room and board is taken care of, blah, 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 blah. Turns out we're staying in some rat's house. I know that's not politically correct to say anymore, but it is what it is. We're staying at this rat's house, and it was her and her two kids, and we ended up getting stuck in a snowstorm, 4 feet of snow in the middle of Canada. But we're stuck in this chick's house. She lets us eat all of her food. Like, her kids are like starving. She had this one little boy who was like 2. And at some point, he's calling me dad. It was really weird. He's blonde hair, blue eyed, like nothing to do with me, and I had nothing to do with his mom. But just whatever. He took a liking to me of all the people in his house. To be fair, I also had blonde hair at that time, but I never had blue eyes. But me, actually, I'm going to name drop one person. I don't think they'll mind me telling this part of the story. Zach the ref and Cameron Matthews, the 3 of us were in the house, and we ended up having a ladder match in the house, in the little girl's bedroom. We hung a backpack from her ceiling fan. And Cameron Matthews and I, we put on an amazing show for about 4 people. And we also broke this girl's bed. But, oh my God, it was the most incredible ladder match anyone's never seen.
So piggybacking on that, it sounds like you have great times on the road. And when you do go on the road and you make those long drives and you get to the show, there's only 20, 30 people in the crowd. Do you get upset about that? And how do you perform on those type of shows?
Definitely don't get upset about it. that's not worth getting upset about. Someone slashing your tires, you get upset about that. 20, 30 people at a crowd, you can be disappointed, you can be bummed out, but no need to be upset. But yeah, no, man, in that kind of situation, and hell, you and I have been on shows with 6 people in the crowd.
Yes, yes.
It's hard to get the adrenaline up and everything, but you go out there, you do what you got to do. The biggest crowd I've wrestled in front of was a little over 2,000. That was in New York. Like 2005, somewhere in that ballpark. And then, I mean, again, to shows with like 6 people in the crowd. So
Yep.
I've been through the gamut of it all. As long as, for me, as long as I'm having fun with the person I'm wrestling with, that helps a ton. One of my favorite matches of all time was with Dashing D1000. Um, it's funny, and it completely just happenstance. That wasn't a planned match. It was that ping pong ball situation where you get your opponent picked or whatever, and it happened to be him. He and I had never worked before, and great combination of styles. We're very similar wrestlers. We both like to play rough, hit hard, so it was a lot of fun. But that was maybe in front of 10 people, and but it's one of my favorite matches of all time. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's disappointing when you don't have a big crowd there. For me, I prefer the bigger the crowd, the bigger I'm going to feel, the bigger I'm going to be, the better I'm going to do. But either way, you go out there and you do the thing.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. One last question before I let you go, Mr. Osiris, because I know you're a busy guy. My last question for you is if you had one regret in your career, what would it be and how would you change it?
That's deep. That is deep. Wow. One regret. Actually, uh, that's actually an easy question to answer. So I'm a very, I don't want to say antisocial, because that's not the right phrase, but I'm not used to like being around people, having friends, and like that sort of thing. I'm very much so a loner. I do my own thing. And because of that, I think I've lost out on a lot of opportunities for cool relationships. A lot of things that I didn't understand as far as in the wrestling world and any world, in the real world and every world. Um, Relationships and connections are huge. Everybody talks about Monica Lewinsky, being an intern, and was it? Actually, I think I'm mixing her up with another one of Bill Clinton's scandals. But there was a thing somewhere about Bill Clinton got his friend a job. And people were like, "Is that appropriate or not?" And it's like, well, he's the president of the United States, so I mean, yeah, he's got a lot more power than most people. But at the same time, it doesn't matter if you're working at Walmart or wherever. If you've got a friend looking for a job and there's an opening, you're going to try to get them in. You're going to be like, "Hey, I'm recommending my friend." And I think if I had done better with maintaining relationships in wrestling, I think that would have opened more doors for me. So I would say if I had a regret, it would be not necessarily, yeah, it'd be not fully understanding how to cultivate relationships and friendships and, Kamala, again, name dropping, but Kamala Harris, I did a road trip with him one time. And he'd reach out to me pretty often after that. And, I'd hit him back here or there, but it would be a lot of time in between. And each time in between be more and more time. And then, he passed away. And I think about that and I'm like, I don't know what was going on in his life at the later years, but maybe he just needed a friend. And, I really was privileged enough that he would be reaching out to me, and I didn't treat it as such, and I can think of countless other examples of just, yeah, relationships that I didn't maintain or cultivate that I probably should have. My phone, I've gone through a multitude of phone numbers over the years, but at one point in time, my phone was like a Rolodex of, if you were to look at the names in that phone, they're all people right now that are the who's who in the wrestling world. I've crossed a lot of paths along the way. A lot of people I've wrestled. I mean, you name him, I've wrestled him. Kenny Omega, wrestled him. Finn Balor, wrestled him. Kevin Steen, whose shirt you're wearing, I've wrestled him. So there's, you name it, I've wrestled them. I've come across their paths. I've shared White Castle with the Young Bucks.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, I've come across so many different people over the years, but never maintained or cultivated relationships with them. So if there was a regret, that would be my one regret.
And then to piggyback on that, before I let you go, I totally agree with your statement because I feel like you're one of the most underrated superstars in wrestling. I love your work. You're always intense and you was always in great shape. So that was a
No,
great.
thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
No problem, man. So if you want to plug anything or where can fans find you on social media, go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm horrible with posting, but on Instagram, Osiris underscore the champ. Mainly, I am plugging Blackstone Labs. Again, get your discount on blackstonelabs.com using the discount code Osiris underscore the champ. But no, I'm going to, come out of my shell that I've been in for this past year, start reaching out to people, try to be more active on social media, try to respond to emails and phone calls and all that stuff. But yeah, so I would say stay tuned to Osiris underscore the champ. Um, Definitely follow my podcast before the 3 count. Will you see me at a wrestling show again? Probably. Probably. I don't know when, I don't know where. But yeah, it'll probably happen at some
I anticipate it.
point. All
Well,
good.
thank you so much, Mr. Osiris. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Honestly, man, honor was all mine. Like, dude, it's funny when I found out about the show, I didn't know what to expect. I'm like, hey, it's CJ, local dude. But then, like, I've seen what you've done. You're 20, 21 episodes in now.
Yes, sir.
You're interviewing people all over the world. You're really doing your thing, man. So seriously, like, the honor is mine that you reached out to me and asked me to be on your show. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate your time. I really do, man. It was a pleasure. Like I said, thank you so much for your time. I wish you the best of luck in your career and or whatever you do,
You
because
too.
I know you're going to be successful at it because I know you're a hard worker. So good
I
luck, man.
appreciate that, man. Thank you, man. And no, you too, man. Wish you the best with all of this. 5 Star Revolution podcast. Everyone, make sure you are tuning in. Not even just every week. You're getting it a couple times a week, 3 times a week. It's always out there. So people, make sure you're checking it out.
Yes, subscribe to our channel, 5 Star Revolution Podcast, and follow us on Facebook, 5 Star Revolution Podcast, for your chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. Thank you so much again, Mr. Osiris. You have a great night, man.
You too.